Hey guys, my name is Brooke Sayles. Welcome back to my channel. I cover everything from faith, fashion, lifestyle, and marriage, so if you love those things, then you will love this channel. So today I have a special guest, so why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey everybody, I'm Brooke's man, I'm Brooke's husband. My name is Danzell Sayles. I'm sure you could guess the last name, but yeah, excited to be on her channel. She's been doing a lot of good work. I do IT for a living currently, about to turn 28 years old. And just thank you all for supporting her channel. Make sure you like and subscribe. So yeah, we can get started with this video.
Yeah, so today, I'm sure if you guys clicked on this video, then you know what it's going to be about. So this is going to be about how God wrote our love story, how we met, and just what God was doing in our life that brought us together. So let's get into the questions. So when and where did we meet?
Yeah, so we actually met right when COVID was first starting, like at the very end of March, and I remember that specifically just because I'm a pretty big basketball fan. I remember March Madness was about to start happening, and I remember they canceled it because of I think there was like a case at the time. There was only like one case of COVID out there in Portland, Oregon, or something like that, or California. But yeah, I remember I was like, oh man. And I remember we met around that time, and we met on this app, the dating app called Hinge, on March 21st, 2020. So babe, what was going on in your life up to us meeting?
Yeah, so basically, let me fast forward back a year and a half. So about a year and a half before me and Danzell had met, I got out of a really bad breakup that had kind of had me questioning like my self-worth and had left me really broken. And I was under the impression that time would heal all the wounds. So for me, I wasn't consciously doing it, but basically I was like putting all of my time into my job. At the time I was a clinical research data coordinator at Children's Hospital in Columbus. And then about 6 months after that, I was also starting to try out like dating apps. So I got on an app called Tinder. Now, for a lot of people, when you hear the word Tinder, you think of like a hookup site. And I know like there are people out there who might even be watching this channel who actually met their husband on Tinder. But for the other 95% of us, we don't have that luck. And I remember like all the people that I was matching with, like they kept commenting on like my physical appearance, and it was just kind of like a letdown.
Yeah, immediately no. Immediately no. Immediately no. Like instantly, I was like, yeah, no. That was my thought.
And I ended up matching with somebody from my previous school, and he turned out to be kind of weird. He had told me that he was in computer software and that he had figured out how to hack my phone and he was watching me. So after that experience, I was like, God, I think I'm good on dating. I'm just gonna focus on myself. I'm gonna focus on you. I'm just gonna start putting in my time like at church and stuff like that. And I kind of was already doing that, but I started to get more serious with it. So I remember that we had started a study in Bible study, and it was called Emotionally Healthy Spirituality. And that was when I started to unpack the hurt that I had from my past relationship. So, you know, God was just letting me know, like, you are beautiful, you are loved, and it's okay to be yourself in relationships. So fast forward 6 months into like March, me and my best friend, we were on FaceTime, and she was just telling me about her roommate at the time. She lived in Minneapolis. Her roommate had met her fiance on a dating app called Hinge. And when she said dating app, I was already like, I've already had some pretty weird, I've already had like some really weird stuff happen on dating apps. So I really was not about to give it a shot. But something in me, and I believe it was God, who told me like, just give it a shot, like you have nothing to lose. So I ended up like creating a profile. I really just spent like 10 minutes. I just picked out my cutest pictures and did the prompts. And what I liked about Hinge was that you could put like your age, what you do for a living, like what your religious beliefs are. You could put if you drink, if you smoke, and then you could do like different prompts to kind of start communication. So I did all that, and probably like a week, I was probably on the app for about a week. And it was funny because I was talking to my friend, and it was like 8 p.m. on Saturday, the day that we met. I literally told her that I was going to delete the app because all of the conversations that I was having they were like super dry, like nobody was intentional, like, you know, like I was having conversations, but they would respond back like 10 hours later or stuff like that. And I was just like, you know, I'm just gonna get off the app. But I guess like 2 hours later, around 10 o'clock, we actually ended up matching. So, babe, what was going on in your life around that time when we met?
So what was going on in my life before I met Brooke, the one who became my wife, Sean? The one who became my wife. Right after high school, I went to the recruiter's office and I enlisted in the Marine Corps. So I went to the Marine Corps, did my 4 years, and when I was in the Marine Corps, it was a good time. Don't get me wrong, I had fun. I made a lot of friends and everything like that.
You moved up in rank pretty fast too while you were in the Marines.
Yeah. So I was just being transparent. I was just partying a lot and just living not the most disciplined life or not the most structured life for a while. I got out of the military and I just started working just a bunch of different jobs and all that stuff, and I wasn't really making a whole lot of money, to be honest, and I was like, okay. Plus I was just partying a lot and just doing stuff, just drinking a lot, and I didn't really have, just not living the most structured, fulfilled life. So I was just looking for some ways to make a little bit of money and all that stuff, and just maybe try and change my circle of friends who I was around. So I went to this like business conference thing. It was like teaching people how to create a lot more money. Just how to create a lot more money, a lot more options and all that stuff. Because I was just curious. And when I at the end of the conference, they had because it was like a whole like weekend thing. At the end of the conference, they had like this optional church service. It's like, hey, if you guys are Christian, we have an optional church service before the last part of the financial conference if you choose to come. And I was like, well, I'm already here. I might as well come. Haven't been to church since like, I don't know, 14, 15, something like that. It's been a while. I grew up in church, but I kind of left that a long time ago. But yeah, so I was like, I haven't been in church in a long time. Why not? So I went to the church conference, to the church seminar section of it. And they just speaking, and to be honest, I can't even remember one thing that they said. I can't remember one thing that the speaker said, because I wasn't really paying attention, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I just got like hit. And at the time, I didn't know what it was. I just got hit, and I just was like, I just felt this voice. It's like, it's time to get saved and give your life to Christ. And it was crazy because I wasn't even paying attention to what the speaker was saying. I was on my phone or looking at my notes from the previous day from the financial stuff. And I was like, what? And I was like, all right, cool. So I went down and I got saved, and it was on my 24th birthday actually. And I was like, whoa. So after I got saved, I decided pretty fast. I was like, I'm gonna take this next 12 months, this next year, and I'm gonna just start, weeding off like alcohol, partying, girls, just finances. I'm gonna just start weeding all this stuff off, and I'm gonna commit to a year of just being like a single. I'm gonna commit to a year being single and be committed to the Lord. Started and studying like the Bible full time. I was like, let me just commit to a year of this before I even jump into another relationship, because before I met her, the longest relationship I ever had was like 3 months. So you could obviously tell that I was probably not the best a man in relationship before I got saved. I just was not the best. If any relationship only lasts 3 months, I mean, you can kind of probably put the pieces together. But yeah, so I committed a year to just being single and just dedicating Lord and studying the Bible. And about halfway through that year, I remember I wrote down a list. I heard this guy say on like a podcast or something. He was like, he wrote down a list of everything he wanted in a future wife, and he prayed for it, and he committed to God. And after he prayed for it, after he wrote it down, and after he prayed about it, he gave it to God and said, hey God, if it is in your will, then then bring me this wife. But he also said, he's like, I'm also committing to sexual purity as well. And I remember I was at work. I just got into IT at the time, and I was working at this company, and I was telling like my coworkers about it because I was really pumped. I was like, yeah, I wrote down this list of this woman, and they were like, and they were just being haters. Honestly, they were like, oh no, you are way too picky. They just out there yapping, and I was like, okay, we'll see. And then 5 months later, I remember it was funny. This dude who I only talked to like twice, I saw him at that business conference thing I went to, and I remember he was like, I look back at it, and it's probably not good advice, but I look back at it, and he said, I don't know why I even listened to him. I look back, it probably wasn't the best advice, but he was telling me, he was like, hey man, if you really want to learn how to do sales, I mean, just do all types of sales, you gotta download, like dating apps. You gotta download this app. It is called Hinge. If you download this app called Hinge, you can sell all types of products on there, and you can learn how to do sales. And I was just like, oh, I bet. I look back at it, I'm like, that sounds dumb, honestly. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. But I was just getting into sales and finances and all that stuff, and I was like, okay, cool. I was like, okay, bet, I'll do it. But I didn't really do anything with it. And then like a year later, it popped in my head, and I was like, maybe I'll try it. So I tried it. I downloaded this app called Hinge because he was telling me about it. And next thing you know, Brooke slid into my DMs on the app called Hinge. Yeah, she doesn't like to admit it, but she slid into my DMs.
I did not slide into your DMs.
Yeah. And then, but God, at that moment, I didn't even realize it, but the list that I wrote out, she was it. God answered it. And I didn't even realize it till a few months later. I was like, oh man. So babe, what was our first conversation like?
Yeah, so he likes to joke around and say that I slid into his DMs, which I did not slide into his DMs. So I mentioned earlier how Hinge is set up. So basically you have your prompts and you can put like different talking points and everything like that. So one of his was 2 truths and a lie. So it had said that he was in the military, he had a weakness for Chipotle, and he had tattoos. So when I scrolled down his profile, I already saw like he had his little Marine Corps outfit on in one of his pictures. So I was like, okay, well obviously I know that was true. And I was like, he probably has a weakness for Chipotle. So I responded and I said, I bet you don't have tattoos. And I was right. So basically we just started talking about like why we were on the app. And I had told him that I was just looking for a like-minded man, and he told me the same thing, which I guess you were trying to sell products, because that's what you said you were on the app for, right?
Originally, yeah, but then, I started looking at some of her pictures in her bio, and
Yes. So that had never even come up in the conversation, like him trying to sell products to me. We ended up talking about like what we like to do, and I had mentioned in one of my previous videos, it was called 6 Signs That He's Husband Material, and he had told me about a book that he was reading. It was called Wild at Heart. And I remember when he said that, I just like got on my little phone and I started looking up like what it was about, and it was about biblical manhood, and I was like, okay, check, like he's a man of God. So after that, we had ended up talking until like past midnight, because I had told you guys we matched at like 10:30 at night. So he ended up ending the conversation by asking me to FaceTime the next day, which was really cool because I was not going to ask him to talk the next day. He was going to have to ask for my phone number. So yeah. So babe, what was the talking phase like?
So the talking phase was interesting for us, I'm not gonna lie. So the talking phase was definitely interesting for us because I know, like we were alluding to earlier, code was just popping off. So we couldn't meet in person. And I know a lot of times, people on dating apps, you talk for like a week or so, and then or 2 weeks, and then you meet in person. So we had a FaceTime for, it was 6 weeks, right? Mm-hmm. We were having 6 weeks, and her parents, they were in their early 60s. So the code just popping off, and with them being a little bit older, we're like, we should probably play it safe, just because she was still living with her parents at the time. At the time, it was different, and I didn't know how it was gonna go. But I look back at it, it was beneficial because I got to know her because we FaceTimed, and we were very creative. We were doing like these Netflix watch parties. Like we were watching, what's that show we were watching?
Lion King.
Not Lion King. Tiger
King. We were watching Tiger King. Yeah.
I was like Lion King. No, but we were watching like doing these Netflix watch parties, playing the games on like those App Store games you can play with the what's it called, iMessage or whatever. We were playing those, and it was awesome because I got to know her without the physical component. Like, I got to know her without touching, kissing, feeling up on her and all that stuff. I got to know her, so I really got to know if I really loved her or not. Which was different, but it was so awesome because, it was the first time I can honestly say it was the first time I ever took a chance to know a girl without trying to have like the physical aspect in the back of my mind, like, okay, I'm trying to talk to her so I can like get some or something like that. No, but for real, I mean, I'm just being honest. It was like the first time, and I remember this one moment. It was like a third or a fourth time talking, something like that. We were talking about Lamar Odom. I don't even know how we started talking about Lamar Odom because he's such a random like basketball player.
I think you were watching a video on YouTube and you had shared about Lamar Odom.
Yeah, because I was talking about, because Lamar Odom was like, he had a testimony video on like how he was in drugs and women and how he's like sober now. So I was just watching the video and I was telling him about it. I think that's what it was. And then you brought up his wife, right?
I had brought up that him and his fiance were saving sex for marriage, and I remember like I wanted to kind of see what his reaction was to that, and I remember he was telling me that he felt like he could relax a little bit because he had been on a few dates before we had started talking, and he was saying that, you know, like he would meet girls and then they would say like, yes, like I'm trying to wait until marriage, and then their actions weren't really lining up like once they met. So he felt like he could relax and like continue the relationship instead of like we talk for like 6 months and then he realizes that our desires are not aligned in that aspect. So that was kind of how that came up.
Yeah, and when I'm not gonna lie, when she said you were like a virgin, so she told me that she was a virgin, and it's funny because I told myself, I was like, I'm committing to no sex until I get married, before I even met her. So I told myself I'm committing to no sex before we get married, before I even met her. So when I met her and she said she was a virgin, it was like a pill of like reality, like because of I committed to no sex, but at the same time I was just avoiding situations, avoiding bars, areas, some women that so I just wouldn't fall into the temptation of sex. So I was just avoiding it. So I never, till this point, I never put myself in position to see if my actions were matching my words, because I was just avoiding certain areas the whole time. But then when I met a woman who I was obviously very, very like attracted to, okay, this is for real, Danzell. You're about to see if you are just all talk or not. So babe, what was the talking phase like for you from your perspective?
Yeah. So the talking phase was kind of new for me as well. I had never been in a relationship where for 6 months the talking phase was just not meeting in person. So I really liked it because it showed that he really must like me if he can't even meet me in person, but we're talking every day, we're FaceTiming. Like he said, we were watching shows together. I remember we had took the 5 love languages quiz together. So it was just like we were really getting to know each other on a kind of deeper level without even the physical aspect involved. And I remember like a month into us talking, like we still hadn't met up at this point, I had this dream where we were walking hand in hand together up a hill, and the scripture that popped in my mind at the time was Amos 3:3, and it says, "Can two walk together unless they agree to do so?" And I remember I asked God, like, what is the meaning behind this? And what I felt like he was saying was like to put that dream on the back burner and to not focus on it. You know, wait until you guys meet and see if things work together. But it's funny because like when I posted our engagement pictures, that was actually the scripture that I ended up putting on our engagement photos. But I didn't even remember I had this dream until like yesterday when I was just looking through like some journal entries I wrote. So it's kind of funny how that all worked out. So babe, when and where was our first date?
Yeah, so our first date, it was kind of a funny story. But I remember we were on a lockdown. The city of Columbus was still on a lockdown at that time. Mm-hmm. And it was like a Monday or a Tuesday, and Governor DeWine said that upcoming Friday he was going to remove the restrictions off of the current lockdown for the city of Columbus. And we were on FaceTime and we were talking about how he's lifting lockdown. We're like, oh, excited. And I was like, I just put her on the spot. And I was like, well, it's Monday. If the lockdown's gonna get lifted on Friday, why wait until Friday to meet? Why don't we just meet up tomorrow? Mm-hmm. And I just put her on the spot, and and I'm sure she was a little nervous at that point, but I was like, hey, like, why not? So we met up, and so she lives with her parents, and her parents are like 60, and you know, they're very traditional in all types of ways. I was already a chivalrous man, but when she told me that on my way, it was either right before I left my apartment or right when I pulled up to her house, it was something like that. She told me, she's like, hey, you're gonna have to come inside and meet my parents if you're gonna pick me up and take me on a date. And I was like, in my head, I was like, what? I was like, I have never had a woman in my life tell me I had to take me her parents on the first time that we ever went on a date. And I was like, oh my goodness, bro. I'm not gonna lie, I was nervous because I was like, they're 62, so they are probably old school. I got kind of nervous when I was walking up to the house, but it all went well. We had a good like 5-10 minute conversation with her parents, and I took her on a date. But I remember when I walked out the house and I sat her in my car, it was weird. When she sat in my passenger seat, I had this feeling of peace about her that I like never had in my life. So it was kind of weird. I was like, man, I just have instant peace when she sat down in my car, and I said, I'm not gonna jump on it immediately, but I'm gonna put it in the back of my mind, and then I'm gonna think about it later. But so, babe, how was our first date?
Yeah, so basically we had decided to go to Chipotle and to Target for our first date. And I know it's kind of random, but I know he had mentioned that Governor DeWine had opened up the lockdown. So now we were allowed to go out past 9 p.m., which was great. But there was still not a lot of things that were open yet.
Yeah.
So restaurants still really weren't open. You couldn't eat inside. So we decided to go get Chipotle. And I remember we took it to his car and we were just eating in there and talking. And I remember I was so nervous. Like, I FaceTimed my friend Bianca and I was like, girl, he wants to meet tomorrow. I was like, I gotta pick out an outfit. I have to do my nails. I gotta make sure my edges are laid. And I remember, like, before he was coming into the house, like, I was vacuuming, I was washing down walls, I was burning candles. I just wanted to make sure, like, when he came into my house, like, it was a good atmosphere, it was clean, because you know, a first impression is everything. And I remember when we met and he walked into my house, I was like, oh my gosh, like, he is so tall. And I remember on his Hinge profile, he had put that he was 6'5", but I didn't really believe him because I was like, you know, like, he's probably lying. Like, I don't know, I've just never met anybody that was 6'5". So I was like, he's probably lying about it. He's probably tall, but not that tall. But when we met, I remember he hugged me and he was like towering over me, and that just like intimidated me a little bit. And I feel like I was so nervous because like, we were locked down for a whole month at that. We were locked down for like a whole month. So I had kind of lost a lot of my social skills. Like, I didn't really know how to talk to people as good because I was just at home. Like, I literally did everything in my room. Like, I did my work, then I would get off my job and I would like do Bible study in my room, like, because we were doing Bible study virtually at the time. So I was just all alone. So when we had met, I was just super nervous. I was overthinking everything, and it was hard for me to like make eye contact. And I'm pretty sure he probably was like, what is wrong with her? Like, why is she acting like this?
We went to Chipotle, and I was trying to be smooth, you know. So I was trying to be smooth, and I was trying to say a couple jokes, and she was just like,
I was not doing all of that.
She was, and I was like, what? What do you say though?
But yeah, so after we had finished up our Chipotle, I remember we had went to Target and he had to get like cooking spray or something random like that. So I just got like some cookies or something. And I remember we went back out to the car and I had shared with him, like, while we were still talking over FaceTime, that I didn't have my license yet. So he got out of the car and he told me to get into the passenger seat, and he went and stood like, the parking spot was probably like 20 feet away, and he said to go park in that spot. Now, I don't even, like, not only do I not have my license, like, I was not even practicing. So the last driving class I took was probably like 4 months ago. So all of my skills were gone. I literally missed the whole spot, and I was like, he is probably not going to text me again. He's probably like, this girl is 23 years old and cannot drive. She can't park. But it was cute because after that, he was talking about how he wanted to teach me how to drive. So what did you think when I missed that spot, babe?
I'm not gonna. So when she said she didn't have a license, I wasn't really phased by, because I'm like, I'm sure I can teach her how to drive in about, probably about 2 months. We could probably get her a license in probably a couple months. It doesn't take that long. But I'm thinking that she just maybe has trouble with parallel parking. I'm thinking she just has trouble with parallel parking or something like that, or maybe she has trouble driving in rush hour. That's what I'm thinking. And she missed the whole parking spot. I was like, okay, we're starting from scratch. That's what I thought. I was like, okay, we're starting from scratch. And I was like, Danzell, don't judge. But I was like, she is really pretty. So
so that made up for it.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, she's really pretty. So that makes up for it. So babe, how did we become official?
Yeah, so we became official. I remember this day. So I remember we had went shopping. It was like May 15th. So at this point, we had been hanging out for a couple of weeks. It was May. And I remember we had went shopping and we had watched a sermon together. Yeah. I believe it was like relationship goals from Transformation Church. And then we were just kind of like chilling at his house at the end of the day. And I remember he had joked around and he was like, you should cook for me sometime. And I was like, who said that? That's girlfriend material stuff. Like, I'm not about to be cooking for some man who's not even made me his girlfriend yet. So when I said that, he was like, well, that's the plan, just not yet. And I was like, what you mean not yet? And he was like, well, I always thought that you should at least date somebody for 3 months before you make them official. And he had said that he wanted to make me his girlfriend on July 1st. So I had asked him, like, so what is so significant about July 1st? And it wasn't me, like, trying to pressure him, but I was just kind of like confused. I remember after I asked him, if you guys don't know, Danzell, he's very extroverted, he's an external processor, he's always joking around, telling dad jokes, and the 9 yards. So the fact that he was just like sitting there quiet, and he was like playing with my hands, and he had like this like half smile going on his face, and I remember like it was almost getting time for him to take me home, because at the time I still didn't have my license, and we lived like almost 25 minutes away from each other. So he had to take me home. And I remember he had stopped me at the door, and he had like grabbed me by both hands, and he was like, Brooke, do you want to be my girlfriend? And I was like, of course I want to be your girlfriend. So that's kind of how we became official. Was he was trying to get me to cook for him, and I was not going to do that. So babe, how was our first kiss?
So our first kiss for me, I was pretty nervous about, just because I've already been swerved by her. I tried to kiss her a few times on a few occasions, and she swerved me every single time. And I was like, oh man. So when we did actually kiss, I was just like the biggest sigh of relief. I was like, oh, thank you, Jesus. But,
so what happened that day though?
Yeah, so we were coming back from Cleveland. We were hanging out with some friends out there in Cleveland, and we were coming back, and we went to this place called the Columbus Park of Roses. I think it was called, Columbus Park of Roses. We just went on a walk, and the whole entire time, I'm thinking like, Danzell, are you gonna try kissing her again? But what if she denies you again? But you should just go out and try to kiss her again. I've already been swerved a few times. What's getting swerved like a 4th time? You're gonna do it. And I was so nervous. I was like, but I don't know if my pride and ego can't take getting swerved again. But we sat down on this bench, and I was gonna kiss her, but I decided not to. I was like, maybe I'll wait later. Afterwards, we went back to her parents' house, and we sat on her front steps. We were just talking, having like a very intimate, romantic talk about us, because we already like official at this point, boyfriend and girlfriend. One thing led to another, and we leaned in for a kiss, and we had our first kiss, and I was like, like the holy music, oh. I was like, yes, finally. I was like, man, I don't have to be thinking about this no more.
He had said that I swerved him a few times, and I remember that I did, because the first time he tried to kiss me was like 5 days before we had became official. So we had this like cook-off at his cousin Stefan's house, and basically like the girls one, of course, but his food was good. But basically he had dropped me off at home, and he had leaned in, he had stopped and parked the car in front of my parents' house. And if you guys don't know my mom, there's like this big window in front of our living room, and she always is looking out the window. Like, it's dark, you can see her head shape peeking out the window. So I was already like, I'm not about to be like trying to kiss somebody and my mom's looking out the window. But I remember earlier that morning I had told myself, if he tries to kiss me, I'm not going to kiss him until he makes me his girlfriend. So I ended up declining him, and I felt really bad about it, because I was like, I hope he doesn't think that I just don't like him altogether, like I do. I just didn't want to open up that can of worms yet, because then we'd have to set like boundaries and like how far is too far and all that. And I was like, right now our relationship is pretty light. Like, let's just keep it that way. Because when you do involve like the physical aspect, then the relationship, it just speeds it up a lot more than it needs to. I remember when I told him that I didn't want to kiss him, and I texted him later that night, and I told him, I hope you don't feel discouraged. And he told me that he didn't feel discouraged. He said that it made him respect me more because I had set that boundary for him, and he had never been denied in that way in the past, so I feel like it kind of set me apart. How did you know that you were in love, and who said it first? And give a little bit of background, okay?
Okay. So how I knew I was in love, well, first of all, I said I love you first, but
period. No.
No, but yeah, I said I love you first, and how I knew I was in love was because we were hanging out at my place, and we were out on my balcony. It was like summertime, and it was like the evening time, like 6, 7, 8 p.m., something like that. And the sun was starting to set, and we were just having some intimate talk. I can't remember what the conversation was about. I remember I was just staring at her in her eyes, and I was like, man, I have like never, ever felt this way about like a woman before. I just never felt this way about a woman before. I was staring at her in the eyes, and I was like talking to God, and I was like, God, I think I might love this woman. I think I might like really love her, like with the capital L, man. I was like, I think I really love her. And I remember just staring at her, and I was like, man, I've never felt this way about any woman in my past, because like I said, I've never been with anybody longer than 3 months. I've never even introduced another woman to my mom before, to my parents. So that goes to show you that I've never even introduced anybody to my mom, and that shows that I've never really been in a real committed relationship, to be completely honest. But yeah, I was looking at it and I was like, man, I think I really do love this woman. And a tear may have, I'm not saying it did, but my eyes may have sweated a tiny bit, but yeah. So babe, how did you know you were in love with me?
So after we were out on the balcony and he had started to shed like a couple of tears and he had got really emotional, which I had never seen him open up that much. Like, he's been vulnerable with me, but he hasn't been vulnerable up to this point. So in my head, I was like, do you like love me?
Are you sweating so much? And why do you look so hungry? And you like Krabby Patties, don't you, Squidward?
And I was like, I remember we got in the car because he had to take me home again. And I was like, what were you thinking out on the balcony? And I remember he was like, well, you know, like I have a couple of things I need to process. And like he had said, he had never been in love before. So I was kind of starting to think like, okay, maybe he does love me, but he wanted to be sure before he actually said it. So I kind of just left it alone. And I remember, fast forward, it was my birthday on July 2nd. And he had took me to get my nails done. We had went to the candle lab, which I still have the candle over there because I'm sentimental and I probably will never burn it. And then we had went out to Marcello's, which is like this Italian restaurant. And I remember after we went downtown and we were by the Scioto River. Yeah, we were by the Scioto River and we were just kind of talking and everything like that. And he kept giving me that same look when we were out on the balcony. And I was like, what is this man thinking about that he is acting like this? So then I remember he went out of town to Conneaut for 4th of July. And so he was like looking at me while we were on FaceTime and he's still giving me that same type of look. And I remember when he came back, he came to my house and it was probably like 6 o'clock, but in the summer, like 6 o'clock, it's like the sun has like set.
Yeah.
So I remember he was talking to me and he had watched this video by Redefine TV and they like talk about love and just relationships. And he told me he watched this video and he had got confirmation from God. So then he had came out and he said that he loved me. And that was kind of how it happened. And so I guess the question was, how did I know I was in love? So I remember the closer that we had got in our relationship, a lot of fears from the past started to come up. Just for me, like, I felt like I was afraid to be vulnerable because if I was vulnerable, then maybe it would scare him away. So I remember one time we were out on my steps again, which I feel like a lot of things in our relationship happened out on the steps.
Yeah.
But I remember I was talking to him and I was just sharing with him like what I was afraid of. And I remember I just started crying and his reaction made me feel safe in that I could truly be myself with him and he wasn't gonna leave like people have in the past. So that was when I started to really feel like I really might love this guy. And I remember like we would be on the phone, we'd be talking and I would be like, I miss you, I'm gonna miss you, I'll talk to you later. But in my head, I was like, I love you. But I just didn't want to say it out loud because I wanted him to say it first. I didn't want to like pressure him or anything like that. So that was when I started to realize like, man, I really do love this guy. And it was probably like the end of June. So we really hadn't even been official that long before I started to feel like I might really love this man. And then after he told me he loved me, I was like, this probably is the guy that I'm gonna end up marrying. So yeah guys, that pretty much wraps up the end of this video. We told you guys about how we met, how we fell in love, and in the next video we're gonna do a part 2. So if you guys can submit some questions on what you guys want to know more about, we'll be sure to answer those questions in the next video, as well as share about our engagement and our wedding. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you guys in the next video.
See you, everybody.
Bye.
See you.